In this episode, Pattie and I will be discussing how you can amplify your psychic gifts and really hone in on your intuitive abilities to a very noticeable degree. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Welcome to another episode of the Awaken Life Podcast. You know me, my name is Victor, and I'm with my beautiful wife, Pattie.
Hello.
And we had a friend reach out to us recently, someone who I wouldn't have expected, I guess, to watch my channel. Most of my high school friends, I don't think, are into this type of stuff. A few have been over the years. But anyway, our friend reached out to Pattie in particular and said, Pattie, I need to share something with you. I had this really wild experience. And apparently, our friend's mother-in-law had an accident or something.
A brain aneurysm.
A brain aneurysm, and was in a coma. And our friend lives in Michigan, and the mother-in-law is in Florida. And our friend had this like unshakable sense that I need to go visit my mother-in-law. And it was like, and she was battling with herself, like, no, that seems sort of inconvenient. I would have to.
She'd never traveled alone, and she decided that she was going to go alone. So she had to go alone or something. And so she was, kind of battling with that.
Yeah, it was a big leap for her just to go because of a feeling, right?
Yeah.
But the feeling grew and grew and grew, and she just could not shake it. So finally, she decided just to go for it. She's like, I'm going. She flew down to Florida, and I guess right when she walked into the room, her mother-in-law, who had previously been in a coma, woke up.
Yeah. And
it was like it was a big time, mind-blowing confirmation that there's something to this intuition, that was life showing her that you have something in you that can be very helpful to people. And it's maybe it's not something you learned in school, your parents taught you. It's something on a soul level that's now becoming relevant for you to express into the world. But that always begs a question, and I hear this from a lot of people, because a lot of people right now are being sort of activated in that way. Well, Vic, how do I like, what's the way people put it? Like, how do I like get better at this? How do I get to understand this ability more? How do I get to come into, get more skillful, more powerful, and just in a sense amplify this? I want to, but it's so foreign to me. I don't know where to begin.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess that's a good description, yeah.
You suppose?
Yeah, I suppose.
I think it was pretty good. Anyways.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, Pattie and I have been, in a sense, doing this for quite a while now, and have discovered ways that really do make a noticeable difference in how psychic you are. It's like any kind of innate talent that a person has. Oftentimes, the more practiced person can win in competitions with people who just sort of rest on their talents. So, but having the combination of a talent with practice, you get your Michael Jordans, So that's like where we're going with this. A lot of you people who listen to this have sort of a talent with it. It's like your thing, and there's a reason why you're feeling, why this is kind of coming into your life. But it's not going to just amplify on its own. It's going to take some work and some practice on your part. And that's what this episode is about for any of you folks who are interested in doing just that. So the most important thing I would say, you can tell me if you agree, is to not only trust the intuitive hits you get, but to act upon them, right?
Yeah.
It's not always easy.
Nope. But yeah, it's the most important one for sure.
Yeah. It's me and Pattie used to see this guy, and I talk about him all the time. His name is Kevin. He was a really amazing psychic back in Michigan. And he once told me, he said, Victor, you're very intuitive. He said, when you meet someone and you have a feeling that and these were his words, he said, if you have a feeling that he's a butthead, then he's a butthead. And just go with it and trust that. And now, how many of you listeners have been burned in this way, where you've met someone or were presented with some kind of life circumstance or opportunity that you just had a feeling that, this feels off. I have a bad feeling about this. I just don't know. But then if you look with your mind, you say, well, there's nothing sort of obvious that I can pick up that would be a cause for concern. So I'm just going to ignore that little subtle hit I got, that little subtle intuitive impression, and just go forward. And then in the end, you say, "Oh my goodness!" Now that you're kicking yourself because you knew you were right all along. That's happened to me many times, and most people. So the way to really amplify your gifts is to start acting on them and stop questioning them so much.
And it doesn't necessarily mean like, say you meet someone and you get like a negative sort of imprint about them. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can never talk to that person again. It's more like just be aware of that and keep them at a distance, you know?
Yeah.
Because there's some people that's like not avoidable, like at work or something like that.
Yeah. But it's another thing I want to share is that it's important to act on your intuition even when it feels kind of awkward. Because a lot of times you'll have these intuitive impressions that you feel like if you were to do them or express them, especially, it's going to bring about like ridicule or something. And it reminds me of our friend Lior. Our friend Lior has been like heavily activated in a psychic sense over the last year.
Yeah.
And she has experiences almost on a daily basis that most people would think are just insane. But we don't, because I've been through a lot of them actually.
Yeah.
And it's actually a beautiful Kundalini awakening she's going through. But we were sitting there one time. We were in Tulum, Mexico. Me and Pattie were visiting our friend Aaron and Lior, and we were hanging out in this little spot where everybody did rapé, the rapé area. And I was talking, I think maybe just with everybody or just Lior, I was talking about how...
I think it was just you and Lior having like your own separate conversation because I don't remember
the story. No,
the actually happening. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I was talking about I want to get into writing books and stuff, and I was just talking to her about that. And Lior wants to write a book, and sort of almost has as well. And you could tell she had like this look in her eye, like she wanted to say something, like she almost was like raising her hand, like Vic. And then she finally did and said, "Vic, this is gonna sound really strange, but when you talked about writing those books or writing a book, I saw your angels above your head." And she sees like lights and like outlines and almost like sometimes actual images of angels and spirit guides. She can actually see them with her own eyes. Mm-hmm. And she saw them, and she's already discovered that that's her own cue for when someone is like on track. And so she explained that to me, like, Victor, take this for what you will, bro, but I saw these spirit guides above your head when you talked about the books, and my interpretation is that you should really do that they really support that, and you're going to be successful, and it's a good direction to go into. But in my experience, because I had that a lot, especially when I was coaching people, I would have those types of impressions all the time. And in the beginning, I was question them, or I would think I'm not going to say anything, so it's gonna feel funny. But I started doing it, and every time I would do it, every time I would tell somebody the best way I could, they would say, "Oh, Vic, that was so, oh my God, I just needed to hear that. Thank you. Oh, wow, that was amazing." So it's like, and the more I did that, the more I just ignored my doubts, which were there frequently, and just said what I felt was best to say and expressed my intuition as best I could, I would see that it would have a positive effect on people. And therefore I became less inhibited in doing that. And then I started getting more hits. Mm-hmm. It's almost like the universe sees, like, this guy does it. He'll say what we nudge him to say. So let's work with him. And my psychic skills deepened big time. Not with any methodology or practice, but because I started using them and trusting them and acting upon them. Mm-hmm. Anything you want to add to that?
I mean, I could add so much stuff, but I'm afraid it might take us like off topic. You know?
Okay, well, we'll move on. So that's very important. Another thing I'll let you sort of lead with, love, is going deep. Doing deep work is very important and will naturally allow you to really blossom those psychic gifts of yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's so many ways that you can do the deep work, but the reason it's so important is because in order to really start hearing your intuition and trusting your intuition, you have to release and let go of all the self-doubt and fear and anxiety and all that stuff that you sort of absorb and learned behaviors through just growing up in this world. And there's so many different ways. My personal favorite, obviously, is working with plant medicine, and not just psychedelics. I really enjoy working with non-psychedelic plants as well, like rose and sage and all the various other types of plants. So it's not just, for me, it's not just limited to psychedelics, but there's also ecstatic dance, and yoga is a really beautiful one because it's actually made to remove energy blocks in your physical body. And when you start removing and balancing out the energy in your body, stuff comes out. So I don't know if I've had many different times in yoga where I'll be like in a pose and I'll just start crying because it just is a perfect release in that moment of whatever. Even if I don't consciously know what I'm crying about, or if I do consciously know what I'm crying about, I always feel much better after that release.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yoga's amazing.
Yeah.
But like the way I look at it, like as far as what?
Well, I was going to say also like breath work and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a million
there's
techniques.
So many
It's
different,
not even important to list them. I want to compel them to do it because it's a challenging thing to do, and no one wants to do the dirty work. But I look at it like imagine a light outside of your house that comes on at night. And imagine it's like really dirty and caked with mud and maybe some frost from the winter. And like the light's there. The power of the light is still there. And when you finally like uncover it, maybe you clean off that lens, all of a sudden that light starts really shining through, less obstructed. So it's a lot like that. All of us, like I look at like a psychic ability as not special. It really is not, and it's sometimes difficult to not. We were talking earlier. It's like ego candy. Oh, I'm so special, but it's really not. It's just a natural function of the human consciousness, and those who are willing to go deep and release and clean off that lens, the more powerfully though that light and those functions, those blessings, those gifts within your consciousness can really shine through you. And yeah, it's important. Like Pattie and I, we do as much inner work as we can while staying balanced.
Yeah.
So it's not about having like, I'm going to go deep and deep and deeper and deeper and deeper as a shortcut because I'm so excited about this, because it's not even so much about the healing. It's about becoming a different person, which involves the healing and then the integration, and then there's the embodiment, the stabilizing of that. So we do as much as we can while staying balanced, but without freaking out and stuff like that, you know?
And it is something like that sometimes I'll notice like, oh wow, okay, it's really hard it's been a lot harder for me to be more balanced and to be in a better state of consciousness. Then I realize, okay, I need to do more integration and less deep work.
Yeah.
You know, so it does take a little practice to become mindful of that and to become aware of like why you might be more agitated than normal when you're like, well, I've been doing all this deep work. Why do I feel like more emotional and worse? But it's just because you need to integrate what you've healed into the person that you're becoming.
Yeah. Yeah. And we sort of are emphasizing this because a lot of people, and my former self included, would maybe click on a podcast like this hoping to hear of some kind of cool technique they've yet to discover, a meditation, what's like some secret underground
to open your third eye.
Practice. And it's like, that's all good, and we're going to get into that,
those things.
But it's, in a sense, it's surface level in the sense that you can only go so far with the amount of light, the amount of energy is able to kind of be expressed out of you. You can sort of optimize that, but we're saying the deep work allows you to bring forth more of that power, more of that energy, so that your intuitive impressions are more obvious, more clear, more impactful, have more of a punch behind them, and just more effective, especially when you go to use them to help other people.
Right. And it allows you to just let go more of the self, you know, so you can say the things that need to be said or do the things that need to be done to help other people. Yeah.
And this is actually something I didn't write down, but it just came to me. I think a really important thing for people to
channeled.
Do. I just got an intuitive hit, and I'm not going to doubt myself. I'm going to say it. By God. No. it's so individual how people get their
Yeah.
their impressions and their messages, and it's so important to really get out of the way and allow yourself to kind of come into your own understanding of like what works best for you. It could be very subtle. It's just very, very individual.
Yeah,
The way
it's
you get your
so
impressions, the way you interpret them, and the way you express them. So it's important to really, even more so than what we were discussing, doing the deep work so the ego can get out of the way. It's important to get out of the way even in this other regard,
Right.
in the how. Let
Yeah.
spirit tell you how best to serve the world
Yeah.
with what you got.
I tell people all the time that are like, for example, someone came to our retreat and she does these amazing tarot readings. And she was just kept saying like, I'm just wanting to get better before I start doing readings. I'm like, no, you already are doing readings. You're doing readings your way. There's no better way. There's your way, and then there's someone else's way. And if you try to hone your gift in someone else's way, you're only going to get so far, because you have to be able to tap into your soul and say, this is the way that I'm going to do it. This is what works for me. That's why that was like my biggest struggle with coming into becoming a medicine woman, is that I see all these other people and I was like, well, I can't do that. I can't do that. Well, I can't play that instrument and I can't do this. And I was like doing all these different things inside me and telling myself all these different things. And I finally was just like, wait, there's no right or wrong way. There's no certain amount of time that has to happen in order for things to start progressing. It's just my way, and it'll be your way of working with your own psychic abilities.
Yeah. And I think even going further with that, if we can, it's that another thing to be aware of is that the way you express your gifts can be very unconventional. Like a lot of people, they hear the word psychic and they think tarot readers, people who tell you the future, channelers, and maybe shamans. But there's so many subtleties. There's an infinite amount of ways that spirit can express itself.
Yeah.
Like trying to think of an example. Like an example is a lot of people are trying to find their purpose, and a lot of people that, especially that watch me, are healers. They're natural healers, and they say, Vic, I don't understand why I felt so inspired to become Reiki certified, and now all of a sudden I got Reiki master. I'm a Reiki master now, and all of a sudden now that's becoming uninteresting to me. That passion is waning, and now I'm finding myself sort of drawn to this other direction that seems to be very contradictory. And I always explain to them, a lot of people here now are going to have their own flavor of psychic ability, and it could be a very eclectic thing. So you don't have to look into the world and find where you fit in. It's more about letting spirit guide you to whatever's exciting at the time, whether it's a healing modality or a book to read or a podcast to listen to or whatever, especially if it's a good podcast.
Yeah.
Let yourself flow, and the common thread that's really going to help you put it all together is that natural excitement, that natural fondness of whatever it is in your life. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to understand its place, but you can trust there will be a place. And in the end, you might find yourself doing something that no one's done before. And it's just a compilation of your entire life experience. But we can so oftentimes constrict that process by
Placing ourselves inside what we think we should fit in.
or
a
trying
box.
to
Yeah.
get into a little box. So just let it flow, man. If you take one thing from this, another very, very big component of truly amplifying your gifts, this is like steroids for your gifts, is I wrote down, raise your hand and tell the universe, I'm willing to serve with what I'm now coming into the realization I possess. I can read tarot cards. How? It's basically, say you realize you're good at tarot reading. Start doing free readings for people. Start charging money if you want, but just start acting, start helping. Most importantly, start acting upon that. And the more you do your best to help other people with what you can do, the better you get at what you can do, big time.
Yeah.
I remember noticing this when I started coaching people one-on-one. I started getting these other psychic gifts, in a sense, if you want to call them that, that were never there before. But now that I was like, I had 30, 40, 50 people that like saw me as someone who could help them, and I was trying my best, just more energy came through. And one of them was, as an example, is anytime I could tell someone was discussing something that was pertaining to their like life purpose, I would feel it in my body. I'd feel choked up, like seeing a touching part of a movie. Also, on the same token, I could tell when someone was discussing like an issue that was a very deeply rooted core, like fear, a core, like one of their core blocks. Whenever somebody was discussing it on kind of a surface level, I could feel it. I'd feel this fear, weird energy in my body, but that was my impression that this is something that this person really needs to dive into, and it's going to help them. So anyway, I was not doing any of that before, but once I started just doing my best as a coach, these other abilities turned on. So what are some ways that you could do this? And it might take some creativity. Like, what are some ways you can start helping people with what you're good at, what you can do, you know? Yeah, it's like Bashar. Some of you who listen to me know Bashar. Bashar is an amazing, powerful channeler, and he gets asked all the time, how do I channel? What's the best way to start channeling? Bashar says, get in front of people. Let them pull the information out of you instead of just asking your own questions. Same with anything else, okay? And then I would say another thing, and it's kind of a contradiction to the whole letting go and this kind of thing, but I would say practice, practice, practice. How often do you sing, love?
Well, before I answer that question, I don't think it's contradictory. I think that when you practice, then you can decide what works for you best.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's contradictory. I think that it's important, if you feel guided to go in one direction, dive into that, practice that, work on that, and then if something else comes in, then go in that direction.
Yeah,
you know?
well, I was just saying, because we emphasized the deep work and almost in a sense mocked the finding a good technique, but in reality it's both. It's not black and white.
Well, yeah, and practicing just could be like you get an intuition and you just follow that, or you listen to it.
Yeah,
you know?
I guess I mean specifically people who have some
a talent that they want to work with, like tarot card readings.
Yeah,
and
more enough clarity. Like me, I know I can channel in videos. That's kind of what I do. So I've gotten a lot better over the years, not because of this stuff, but also a lot of it is because I just practice. I've shot over 1,000 YouTube videos, and that's published videos. There's probably been 2,000 videos in total. That's a lot of videos.
Right.
And you sing pretty much
almost
every
daily.
single night. And that's your medicine. As another example of how your psychic gifts can express themselves in non-stereotypically psychic ways. Like, but when Pattie sings, it's like she's channeling when she sings. And in fact, during ceremonies, she's now being asked to sing, and a lot of times people start throwing up when they hear you sing.
Yes, it's so
and
great.
In this situation, that's good. That
Or
means
crying, yeah.
that means you're moving energy in people's bodies to the point of cause. In fact, I almost never purge. I almost never vomit during a ceremony. I've done like 25 of them probably at this point. I've only vomited 3 times, I think. And the last one was right when you started singing, it was like, blah.
You're welcome.
It threw me into a whole night of throwing up. And I was like, wow, great song, man. That was good.
Yeah, that's the only time you want someone vomiting when you sing.
Yeah, but the point is, like,
that's
not psychic. That's not. It's like, that's channeling spirit in a sense.
That's
as much
exactly
as anything.
what it is. Yeah, and I can feel it. You know, even when I sing not in ceremony, when I'm just practicing, I can feel the difference between spirit coming in and flowing through me, or I'm just singing just because I like enjoy singing.
Yes.
So the more that I sing, the more easily I can decipher the difference. And I'm at a point now where when I come in, I can be like, oh, no. It's that you got to go back. You sit over there and you wait there until I'm done. You know?
Yes.
And so now I can really like tap into that and feel that and move with that. And the more that I practice that, the easier it is.
Yes, I found that to be the case with myself. In fact, you probably remember this when I was earlier in my YouTube career, I would sometimes be able to really tap in and produce a message that was like really, I was satisfied with it because I just knew it was like a channeled thing. And I was like, wow, that was really good. I know it's going to work and be helpful. But I wasn't able to do that on command very often. And that's why I would sometimes shoot 4 or 5 videos that sucked. And then the 6th one, I would just like fall into it. And I would say, there it is. And it was very frustrating because sometimes I'd gather all my equipment. I'd ride my bike with my, at the time we lived in Michigan, I'd ride my bike with the tripod to this like cemetery, actually.
Yeah.
Funny enough, it was a cemetery that had kind of a neat background.
Yeah.
And I'd get all set up and I'd be there at the right time of day and I'd have my notes and I'd get there and it was like, I could tell this is just Victor talking. This is too much of me talking and not enough not of that I am presence. And it was very frustrating, but just again, with that persistence and practice, I just naturally got better and better and better of not having as much me in the equation, you know?
Yeah. And in the same sense, like when I work on people when I do healings on people, it's the same sort of thing. Like I know that, you know, the spirit has to come in so I can do what is necessary for that specific person.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing. So it doesn't matter if I'm singing or if I'm healing someone or if I'm just talking. Like if I'm just having a conversation, sometimes this just happened. In fact, I didn't even think anything of it until Aaron mentioned it. But I'm going to make the story really quick. Basically, we went to this like cave and it was like you had to kind of rock climb and like hang on the side to get inside this little cave. And I don't like heights. I don't like that kind of, I love being in the mountains and I love to like go hiking, but climbing up is not my favorite thing, especially if there's like a steep cliff, you know, down there. Anyway, everyone was trying to help me and I was like, no, I'm just going to do this myself. Well, after I got done, I said to Aaron, I said, well, how am I going to know if I can actually do it if I accept your help? And it was just a natural thing that I just said, but it sent him into this whole thing. I guess he talked about it on his podcast and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, it just was a thought that I just kind of said, but it was very helpful for him, you know,
Yeah.
and me too. 'Cause then later on I was thinking
Right.
about that situation too. But anyway, it's like, it doesn't have to necessarily be when you're working, just following that intuition, practicing that, doing what feels natural in that moment to say, you know, or something.
And it's like the more more often that'll happen when you do that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of this awesome book. In fact, a lot of you who are trying to find your purpose would, I think, eat it up. It's amazing. It's called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. She's the author of, what is it? Eat, Pray, Love. Yeah, it was a huge book. Real famous author.
They made a book about it, and Julia Roberts was, a movie, and Julia Roberts was in it, I think.
But she talks about like an idea for a book as an example. Ideas are basically their own, like almost like ideas. You can look at them like they're their own entities floating around the world, looking for conduits, people who are going to express those ideas. And she said that the more you act on those ideas you get, the more ideas you get. Make sense? Were you tapping there?
I just was checking the time. Just making sure, yeah.
So
no, that's true.
So those
100%.
who just stop questioning themselves so much, stop doubting themselves, just stop stop listening to doubt, period, and literally acting on their intuition as best you can. You don't got to have it all figured out.
And it doesn't it's always perfect even when you think it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I say things sometimes I'm like, man, why did I say that in that way? You know, but it always comes out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like perfect is like my favorite word, but everything is always perfect, even when there's imperfections, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you understand our point. It's important to just act on your intuition as best you can. And then lastly, before we go, this is sort of a word of the wise because it's a tip. When you start really spending time in this type of energy, this higher frequency energy that is like what you would call a psychic ability or a psychic stream of consciousness. This energy is very powerful, and it's like any power requires great responsibility. And it can, if you spend too much time in it, you're doing too much of it, you can become extremely ungrounded, where you become unrelatable, you become ineffective in the real world, where you're too much in the clouds, too much in the abstract. And also it can exhaust your physical body. So we've learned to really, as an example, Pattie and I shot an entire podcast, this exact episode, an hour ago, and it was a 35-minute long session, and we chose not to use it because I was very ungrounded during it. And you could probably tell, some people would have probably liked it. The content was okay, but the
content was good, but it was like it was just
too much, too
you just weren't grounded enough
flighty,
for what we're talking about. And it's really important to stay grounded to this earth while we're here, because when we're too much like in the esoteric or, with our angels and all that, then we get so connected to that, then we sort of forget that we have a life here on this planet, and we need to be able to like fulfill our purpose here. Right.
Yeah, and then even though you're in that world more and you're getting more messages, it gets more lost in translation. Where you you start realizing it when you try to express it, and the person's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" They look at you with those eyes like you're just fucking crazy.
Yeah,
man.
and you just feel it too. Like last year, I was really, really drinking a lot of ayahuasca and working with a lot of plant medicines. And towards the end of the year, I felt it. I felt like, I really need to like take a step back and really just do some integration work with all the things that I've learned, because it just felt like I was spending too much time outside of my body.
Yeah. And just before we go, it's like, it can be not seductive, but very it's sometimes hard not to be in that state, because it feels really good when you're in that channel and you're in that sort of flow of spirit. It feels great, and it's like it's got its own buzz and energy to it. But with the experience, you'll learn to become kind of mindful, because again, for one, you'll burn your body out big time, and two, it just becomes where you're just not really grounded. You're not, and there's not as much happiness for you as well in that. But all of us right now, it's kind of an interesting circumstance. We're all doing our best, because all of us right now are being activated. These psychic gifts are coming on online in a sense, and we're here kind of for the first time saying, well, what's the best way to utilize them? And of course, which tends to be the message for all things in life, it's a balance.
Well, the best way to utilize the best way is to do your way. That's the best way.
Well, you know what I mean. The point of that was like, it's important to be balanced with your approach.
Right, yeah.
Anyways, I think that covers everything, my love.
Okay.
What, you want to add something?
No, I'm just being a goofball.
Really?
Inside.
Okay. Well, good. Well, Pattie's feeling a bit on the too goofy.
I'm a little
We're gonna have to go
now.
Yeah, we're getting ungrounded and goofy. We got to bounce. Thank you all for listening and watching. If you're on this, just so you know, podcast listeners, and I hesitate to say this in case we don't go forth with it, but Pattie and I have decided we're going to at least give it a try, where we're going to start recording our podcast episodes on video, and then developing a smaller YouTube channel with just smaller clips, sort of highlighting certain key moment, 2 or 3 minute clips that hone in on a certain point. And we're going to see how that does, just so people can kind of like, scan through the material in a more effective way. If there's something you need to hear, you could just find maybe the title that sticks out to you. So anyways, we're going to give that a try. Anyways, I'm going to say anyways 3 more times, and then we're going to go.
And I think we should say like 10 more times as well, because we both said that like so much this podcast.
Yeah. Peace out, my friends. Thank you. Love you all.
Namaste.